Hey everybody, it's Ryan here at Pi Records, and I'm here with Mike Phillips from Gabba Gabba Ha Zine and Podcast. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Very good, very good. So we've been in contact for some time now. Um, the Carolina bands really kind of connected us somehow. I really love the scene that's going on down there. Can
Mhm.
you tell me a little bit about how you fit into all that?
Okay. Well, I got into the music scene here in Charlotte almost 30 years ago. My first band started 30 years ago. And I live outside of Charlotte in a small town called Kings Mountain. And we started our first punk band, 30 years ago here in Kings Mountain, above my parents' garage, called the Style and Johnny Appleseeds. And it took a little while. We played some shows just around town. We threw our own shows at the Armory and at a practice space. But we finally started playing in Charlotte. And then I met my friend Eric, who I still play with to this day, in Van Huskins. And we started playing together in a band called Popes on Dope. So from, probably about 28 years ago or so, I've been involved in the Charlotte music scene.
Very cool. Very cool. What brings Charlotte and the guys from South Carolina together?
Well, a lot of that happens because Charlotte is so close to the border of North and South Carolina. And so a lot of the bands that play, from Columbia, Rock Hill, even bands from like Charleston, that's pretty far away, but that, a lot of those bands ended up coming through Charlotte, playing the Milestone or Heretics back in the day, or, Tremont. So, we've built a friendships with these bands. Like one of my best friends, Mike Benson from Trash Room, who you've talked to, I believe. Me and him have been friends since I'm trying to remember, 1993. His band 134 and my band played together in an Armory here in Kings Mountain. And we've just been friends ever since. So the scenes just work well together.
Very cool. Is that Hobo Wolfman Records t-shirt you're wearing?
Yeah, it is.
I think Danny's got a really good thing going over there.
Yeah, Danny is great. I love Danny. He sponsors my podcast, so I figured I'd wear his shirt for your podcast.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I get along really well with Danny.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I look forward to actually meeting him in the future. I've never met him before, but me and Danny talk quite frequently online.
Very cool. Very cool. So tell me a little bit about the podcast and the zine. I would love to come down there and visit you and beyond sometime, but for now we're going to have to do it this way. But
yeah,
tell me a little about what you guys talk about and we'll go from there.
Okay. So the zine, the whole thing, Gabba Gabba Ha, started back in 1996. Me and my friend Eric, again, we decided to put out a zine when we were playing in a band called The Accidents. And we wanted to just basically cover the Charlotte music scene. And so we did 2 issues of it back then. It's a lot of work. It's really hard. It's time consuming and it's expensive, which I've recently relearned. But when I started to do the podcast last year, actually it's been a couple of years now. I was thinking about it in 2019. I was trying to come up with a name, and one of my friends said, "Why don't you call it Gabba Gabba Ha, like the old zine?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that might be a good idea." And I'll bring the zine back with it, which so far I've done one issue, and I'm pretty much almost done with the second issue. COVID really kind of took the wind out of my sails on that. Wow. But anyway, I just wanted to really kind of promote, when I brought this back, the podcast. I wanted to talk about all these people that I see in bands that are still playing to this day. People like I just mentioned, Mike Benson, but the people I've known, and I've been seeing bands for 30 years now. And I know they've got good stories. They've been in a lot of good bands, put out a lot of great music. And so I just wanted to talk to these people and tell their story about how they got involved in music, what bands they've been in, what they're doing now, what they plan on doing. And the zine kind of came back with that. But again, like I said, a lot of work and it's expensive. So it's not my favorite part of it.
So you have, where can they find your podcast?
Well, it's all over at gabbagabbaha.com. So it's pretty easy to find. If you're looking for links to it, if you want to see the zine online, it's online there as well. But if you just want to listen to the podcast, it's available pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, everywhere you listen to podcasts, it's out there.
Cool. Cool. So is your podcast is genre specific, or do you cover a lot of area other than that?
It's pretty genre specific. I like to say heavy music, or basically heavy underground music, because there's a lot of bands that don't need me. And it's mostly about Charlotte. I mean, well, not Charlotte, the North Carolina, South Carolina scene, the Carolinas. But I try to keep it mostly, I always say punk rock, but I use that term very broadly, because a lot of the bands that I cover aren't really punk rock bands, but they fall into that category somehow. But it's going to be heavier stuff. Now, I do want to kind of branch out and cover some other things. I've got some ideas for episodes, but mostly it's heavier music, punk rock, metal, hard rock, just the kind of stuff I listen to mostly, although I listen to a lot of different stuff.
I was introduced to you through Larry Parker. He has a really good comp that he does.
Mm-hmm.
How well do you know Larry?
I know Larry all right. Me and him met about a year ago, about the time I started this podcast. And my band's been on a couple of his compilations, the Monster Compster comps. I'm trying to remember which ones they were, maybe 3 and 6 or something like that. 3 and 5, I think. But Van Huskins is on both of those. And, me and him talk quite a bit, just share ideas. And I like the music he's putting out. He's another one that's doing some great work, just putting out some music, making it available and out there promoting it. Because, one thing I've noticed is, and another reason I started all this was to help bands promote things and to promote themselves. But I do notice a lot of bands have trouble promoting themselves. So it's nice to have that help out there in the form of podcasts and record labels that are willing to get out there and do the work for
Totally.
you a little bit.
Yeah. So what do you go live with your podcast? Is it on a certain time, or is it something you post?
Well, the podcast itself is I post it usually every Wednesday. It comes out. But it's, you just listen to it on demand. It streams everywhere you want to listen to podcasts. But back during the summer last year, right after COVID started, it was spring and summer, I started going live on Facebook every Saturday night for like 2 hours, just playing local music, just basically old radio station style broadcast, which I do on the podcast as well. Every now and then I put out radio episodes, so you can just listen to music. But I did that for a little while on Facebook, and then Facebook started making it really difficult. I'd get my broadcast kicked off, and when you go back to re-listen to it, a lot of songs we muted. And then Facebook kind of implemented some new rules where they were going to basically start banning profiles or deleting profiles for doing stuff. I don't know this actually happened, but I just kind of stepped back from it at that point. I was just like, I don't want to, because I guess they don't want to facilitate pirate radio stations, and I can understand that.
Right.
But I don't want to lose the Gabba Gabba Huh Facebook page because I want to get on and play music. Now, a lot of people miss what I was doing, but it wasn't like a lot of people were listening to it. So, I miss it myself. But again, I put out the radio episodes of my podcast that does the same thing.
Cool. What are some of your influences in Van Huskins? I have actually a cassette over on my shelf over there.
Yeah, I remember sending that to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so our influences, so me and Eric have been playing together for, like I said, almost 30 years. Me and him have known each other for 28 years, or 29 years now, maybe. But we've known each other for quite a while. We've been playing music, and we started off playing just like 2-3 chord punk rock, Ramones, Sex Pistols, Misfits inspired stuff, just dirty punk rock. And over the years, we just gathered, we're still highly influenced by that stuff, Black Flag. But we're also very influenced by bands like Black Sabbath and ZZ Top and Voivod, even like some metal. And so we're trying to put a lot of those influences in our music. And actually, like a lot of the newer stuff we're writing is a lot bluesier, which I guess is where the ZZ Top influence comes in. But you're not going to listen to us and go, "Oh man, they love ZZ Top." But if you know that we love ZZ Top, you'll hear it in the music.
Nice. So how do you get people on your podcast? Is it when they're touring, they come through town, they stop in, they say hi, promote their show? What is the basic premise of your podcast?
So it was pretty easy in the beginning because I've got a lot of friends in the music scene, and again, I'm focusing on bands that are in California or wherever. But so I started off with my friends and people that live around here in the area, and I would go visit them and I've got a Zoom recorder, a little 6-track Zoom recorder that's highly portable. I take it out at their practice space, or they come to me, and we sit around and we talk for 2 to 3 hours, and then I take that back and I edit it down to an hour and a half to 2 hours and put music in it. And then COVID hit. And so that kind of threw a wrench in things, but we started doing it this way. And there have been some since COVID hit that I've done in person. We've just been very careful about it. But I'm still doing them via Skype or Zoom, or, however I can do it, Facebook Messenger sometimes, just depending on whatever works for the artist, which is actually kind of let me branch out and do people from like Raleigh, the Raleigh area. My last episode was with Chris Bickle from Columbia, South Carolina, which are things that I wanted to do anyway, but I can do them a little bit more often while we're doing them, over, online. But once this is all over, I plan on trying to get to those areas and do a lot more of them in person because they're more fun in person.
Yeah, I agree. What are some of the bands that you play in your radio station? Are they all local bands?
Yeah, it's all local bands. I've already mentioned Trash Room. You've talked to Brandy and the Butcher.
Yep.
Long Shot Odds, I believe you've talked to them as well.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember some of the other bands you've talked to, but we have Body Bags, the Fill-Ins.
Yep.
I'll go blank here, and I'll have some friends going, "Oh, why did you forget about me?" Dead Regions. But it's just everything from North Carolina. And I mentioned all current bands, but I also play bands from the past. I mean, there's bands like Pipe who have been around for a long time. Super Chunk, I'm tread carefully with because they're a bigger band and I don't want, any kind of rights issues there. But, a lot of classic bands, COC, I played some of their early stuff on there. The Bad Checks, again, I'm just kind of drawing a blank, but, the Cigarettes and Subculture, bunch of old bands.
Awesome. So what are you working on right now? I know you're very super busy with the zine, but how much preparation and time do you do in like quote unquote pre-production for your podcast?
So the podcast it's a lot more post-production than pre-production, but I do like usually, if I don't know the artist very well, I try to find out a little bit about them, try to find out some things about some albums they put out, listen to them. I always kind of put a little bit of preparation into it, but if it's somebody I know pretty well, I don't really prep a whole lot. But then what I do is, whatever we come up with in the 3 hours that we sit down and we talk, I take that back and I edit it to make it sound really good. And a lot of times I cut myself out just because I feel like what I'm saying is not very important. But a lot of times that just has to do with time issues too, because I want to try to keep it kind of as concise as possible as you can with an hour and a half to 2 hours. But it's, it depends on the episode. Like Chris Bickle, the episode I just recently did, I watched both of his movies because he just recently put out some movies. I watched both of those for my pre-production on those.
Oh, very cool. I'm interested in it to know a little bit more about that.
Well, about the movies?
Yeah, about your conversation.
I'm sorry, what was that again?
About the conversation you had with him about those.
Oh yeah, well, so Chris Bickle, he's one of those guys that's been in the scene for a long time, a little bit longer than I have. But I've known him not known him, but I met him probably like 28 years ago. And he's always been in these bands, Inhumanity, Guy on a Punchline, some real good hardcore kind of screamy punk bands. And but now he makes movies, and they're like kind of like grindhouse type movies, exploitation type movies, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And they're a lot of fun. So we talked about his music history, but then like the second half of the episode was all talking about movies. And so that was a lot of fun because it kind of let me talk about something a little bit different. And then we got to bring the music back into it because he includes local music in his movies.
Oh, that's great. That's a big boost.
Yeah. So he's somebody you would like to talk to someday. He's a really good guy. He's been around for a long time and knows a lot of stuff.
I would love to do that. What are the two movies that he put out?
The first one's called The Theta Girl, and it's kind of a more of a horror movie. And then the newest one's called Bad Girls, and it's a lot of fun. It's like a rock and roll road movie, but it's three girls going around shooting up liquor stores and stuff. And it involves some pretty funny stuff that centers around punk rock and bands. So that was fun for me.
So he's a writer director type of thing.
Yep.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So so the Carolina music scene has a lot of talent in it, and that includes movies.
Yeah, I was very I want to say enlightened by how big the scene was down there. There's a lot going on. What currently, I mean, pre-COVID, what were some of the big things that were happening that were going to be on the horizon?
Well, everybody's always putting out new music, and the bad thing is that when COVID hit, not only was Van Huskins getting ready to release that cassette that you were talking about, but we were, there were other bands, other friends that we have that were releasing music. So everybody was real excited about these new projects that we had coming out, and then they came out, and we had to find different ways to promote them. But just playing shows. We're all, me and most of my friends. I mean, there are some younger people in the scene, but most of us are in our 40s, 50s even. So we don't have the aspirations of being big rock stars and doing all these amazing things. We just want to get together with our friends and play shows and keep writing music that we enjoy playing and enjoy listening to, and hope that other people enjoy it. But Gabba Gabba Huh wanted to be a little bit more involved in, like, maybe throwing some, not quite ready for a festival yet, but putting on some shows. And so I had to kind of, rethink Gabba Gabba Huh at that time. It's actually worked pretty well for me. COVID did. I hate to say it that way, but I mean, I think it would have worked better if I could have seen, done some promotion in person, but I found ways to adapt.
Yeah. Having conversations like this is a big plus. Very flexible schedule and very easy to edit. And I wanted to get into the nuts and bolts a little bit with you and ask how you piece everything together and how you decide what's going to air at what time.
Okay. So, excuse me. Whenever I get the episode, like the 3 hours or whatever I have, when I start listening to it, I just, I make sure that the important stuff goes in the episode, but I also make sure that I put some of the, like you said, the nuts and the bolts, the things that happen behind the scenes. Like anytime we have technical difficulties or anything, I usually keep that in the episode. Now I'll still edit some of it out, but I'll edit it in a way that I leave the good stuff in and that kind of adds to it without taking up too much time or too much. But then as I'm listening to the episode, I'll cut out a lot of, because I'm bad about it, saying things like, and like, and if somebody says that a lot, I cut that stuff out. But I leave most of the stories intact as much as I can. I'll cut out bits here and there that don't really add to the story because I'm trying to cut it down for time. And then as I get to each band that we talk about, I go, okay, now I need to find some music for that. And I put music in it. And I do all this in Audacity. It's a free program, but it's pretty simple to use. I don't think I'd use it if I was recording music, but it's definitely very good for doing something like a podcast. And I've gotten pretty good at it, so where it doesn't take me, I still do spend probably like 6 hours editing an episode. Yeah. But I'm real picky about things sometimes.
That's the software I'm going to be using for our new radio show.
Yeah,
I'm currently editing it right now, but like you said, I can't be like at a radio station doing it every day or every week.
Yeah,
it's so time consuming. Between work schedules and whatever. And I want it to be a nice size show so that people don't come and listen and it's a half hour and then they don't get one for another 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Maybe an hour and a half would be good. But I'm interested in knowing about your record collection. What's in your record collection that might be your most prized possession?
Most prized possession. It used to be a Black Flag Nervous Breakdown 7-inch that was autographed, but many years ago when I was married, we needed the money more than we needed the record at the time. So I ended up having to sell that. My most prized possession now. That's a really tough one. It would probably honestly be my own record. I've been on a couple of records, but I was in a band called Gas House one time, and we put out a record. Well, we didn't actually put it out. We had a record made, and it was kind of a demo. And by the time we got the records, our singer left, and we just didn't do anything with it. So I've still got some of those, and that's probably my most prized possession. But my record collection I've got a lot of records, and I've got a lot of really good records, and I've got a lot of really cheap records because I'm a sucker for the dollar bin. And so I've got, all kinds of good punk rock records, a lot of Ramones records, the Stooges and things like that. But then I've got a bunch of country records and a bunch of country compilations and stuff that I paid $1 for that are just, I listen to those probably more than I listen to my punk rock records these days.
Very cool. I'm a vinyl guy, so I can totally appreciate the dollar bin.
Yeah.
When you can get back out and actually go to a record store, that would be, it just seems like when all this lets up, people are just going to go out in mass, and there's going to be tons of people at shows, tons of people in the record stores.
I hope so.
because we're so jonesing for it. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of take for granted that it's there at the time, and then look at us now.
Yeah. But yeah, I know some people that turn their nose up at the dollar bin and think, "Oh man, that just makes for a crappy collection." I'm like, "No, man, it just makes for a better, more rounded out collection." And, I don't care for records in pristine condition because I've got a lot of really cool records that are $1. It can have some character to it as long as it plays. I'll listen to it.
Even the crackle in the pops, I think that's all a part of the experience. That's part of it.
Definitely. Yeah, especially if you're listening to something old, it's like some old country music. Oh yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Some Hank Williams with some crackles and pops in it. I love that.
Oh yeah. So your Van Huskins tape, is that released, or has that not been released yet?
Yeah, that's released. Yeah, we did go ahead and release it, and I just basically did a live thing on Facebook where I played it and talked about it a little bit because we couldn't play our release show, which we wanted to do. But you can find that at vanhuskins.bandcamp.com. You can get it digitally, and we still have some physical copies of it available as well.
I love the idea that you're doing it on tape. Why did you what made you think about putting it on cassette?
Well, I have one of my friends. He was the singer for that band I mentioned earlier, Style and Johnny Appleseeds. He lives in Durham, North Carolina now, which is about 3 hours away from here. But he does a little label where he puts out records sometimes and cassettes. I don't think he's ever put out a CD. But he wanted to put out a cassette for us. And we did it all DIY. Me and him actually did it together. It was just a project for us to work on together. And one thing is CDs don't really sell these days. I mean, some people will buy them, but they don't really sell. And I'm a big proponent of physical media. I love physical media. So anytime I release something, I want it to have some sort of physical media. And we just decided, well, cassettes are a different way to go. We still put a download code in it so people can download it. But cassettes are, I always say that some people are going to see a cassette on the merch table and go, "Oh, I'll buy that for $5," even if they don't have a cassette player at home, just because it's something different.
Yeah.
And a way to support the band. So, and actually cassettes is something I'm getting ready to do with Gabba Gabba Huh as well. It's going to be, it's a label now as well. But it's going to be a cassette label, and I may put out some CDs, but it's going to be a cassette label. And I've already done the Van Huskins CD that we put out a couple of years ago. I did some cassettes of it, but the next thing I'm going to put out is my friend Johnny's band, Queen City Rejects. They're from Charlotte, and we're going to put out his stuff on cassette.
Oh, that's interesting. I did not know that was coming down the pipe.
Yeah, it's something I talked about a while back, but really haven't done much with. And so we're going to do that. And it's going to be completely DIY as well. I'm not going to get them made. I'm going to order everything and do them in house and just do it the old school way. Because I figure that's a little bit better than having them made in Canada and then selling them for $5. This thing's something I made with my hands.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't make the cassette, but I made the cover and everything with my hands.
more personal that way.
Yeah.
Very cool. So is there anything you'd like to add before we sign off? Anything coming up podcast wise that might be of interest?
Well, there'll always be a new episode coming out either this Wednesday or the following Wednesday. Every now and then I'll take a week off. And I'm usually filling my weeks by doing other stuff, other promotion on my Facebook page. But I'll be recording an episode tomorrow with one of my old friends. He's actually going to come visit me, and we're going to do it here in person. But if you want to check out the podcast, I always recommend, just go wherever you listen to podcasts. When you find it, Gabba Gabba Huh, there's going to be two different kinds. There's going to be talks, which is my interviews, and radios, which is my music, basically like a radio show. The radio episodes are generally about 30 minutes. Every now and then I do a longer one for whatever reason, but they're about 30 minutes, 10, 12 songs. And I talk just a little bit about the songs. My talks episodes are about an hour and a half to 2 hours. All my guests are great. They all tell great stories. I fill them with music as well. If you want a good place to start, Chris Bickle, the last one, it's episode 36. It's a good place to start because, like I said, he's an interesting guy, and you can hear about music and movies.
Very cool. Well, I'm certainly very impressed by the Carolinas music scene, and I know I get a lot of my info from you in your Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
Also Larry and Billy Riot and Liz Hale. But I always try to keep my ear to the ground to hear what's coming out, and Larry Parker's a big part of that too, and I would love to see him on your show.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely want to get him on here, but I've heard him on Billy's podcast before, and he doesn't talk a whole lot. I'm like, Larry, you need to talk more.
Yeah, like I can carry on a conversation with him for like an hour on the messenger, but we did an interview and it was like 7 minutes, and I'm like, okay. But he's
one of those. I was gonna say he's one of those I think I'm gonna have to sit down with in person and talk to, because those conversations just generally do tend to flow a little better.
Yeah, I agree. So thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate your time. I know you had a long day at work, and thank you for making the time for me and making a huge contribution to the Carolina music scene. I know I appreciate everything that comes out of there. And I'm sure anybody who listens to your podcast will get a great insight on a hidden gem down there.
Yeah, and I appreciate you, because you really, like you said, for some reason, I don't know who was the first band, but for some reason we saw you and your wife, and it was just awesome, and everybody just loved it. And thank you for helping promote the Carolina music scene from way up there. You don't have to do that.
Oh, well, I think the main reason is you guys just have a lot of great bands.
There's a lot of talent.
I haven't heard one bad thing. So like when you see that coming from this, like a concentrated area, it gets you excited, like something's happening,
Yeah. I'd like to see something bigger happen, but we're happy with where it is. We love it. We're having a great time.
All right. Much respect, Steve. Or I'm sorry, Mike.
That's all right.
something with Steve Van something that made me think of that because of the Van Huskins.
Yes. All right. I appreciate it, Ryan.
Thank you so much.
All right. You have a great night. Take care, man.
Yeah.